Before you guys get bored and click away, this is going to be kind of a one-shot process here. I was able to create a whole bunch, dozens in fact, of perfect 16th inch strips. It's hard to say. I was also able to create 16th by 16th inch squares. I don't know what anyone would use that for, but I wanted to see how well this worked before I presented it to you. And then I was actually able to make a little bit of 16th of an inch by a 32nd of an inch thin rips. Again, I don't know what you would possibly use that for. Here on the table saw, which if you think about it, this is a very barbaric machine for milling up something that small. But I wanted to see if it works, and it does. Real quick, though, I want to explain, I know that there's other ways to do thin rips. There's probably dozens of ways. There's two that I know of that I'm not really a big fan of, which is why I've never had one of them. The first one, this is not a thin rip jig, but I'm just going to use it as a demo real quick. The idea is usually there's some sort of little roller or something on here, and you set that up the distance from the blade that you want. So let's just say we're going to do a 16th inch. Okay, we're going to set it here, and then we're going to take our material like so, and we're going to run this through the blade. And as you can see, I'm going to have a little offcut right here. But then when we get that through the blade, we need to now adjust our fence. That's where we went wrong. Whenever you adjust your fence, you run room for error. That's just the way that it goes. It's very matter of fact. There's no other way around it. You want your fence at a constant, or else you're going to run into an error here or there. As I go to now reset my fence, this is a little too tight, so I need to back that off. That's actually a little bit too loose. I think I like that right there. Okay, so now I'm ready to run my second strip. Run my second strip through, but then now my board is short, so I have to bring my fence back in. Okay, so now I have to line this up. I'm already tired of this. Okay, now this isn't a thin rip jig. Maybe an actual store-bought thin rip jig works a little bit better than this. Again, this is just for an example. I'm just not a fan of moving the fence. There's another way that I actually do like, however, we're gonna use this. Okay, so in this example, this board would be a little bit wider so that you're not so close to the blade. You're gonna have some sort of a hook on the end here. You're gonna set your fence here to the distance that you want. So I'm gonna have a little gap between this edge on the inside and the inside of my blade. And again, let's just say that it's gonna be a 16th of an inch. I have this little hook here. It's, you know, screwed or something into this piece. This is all one piece, and this is my jig. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set my board up against here, leave my fence alone, and then I'm gonna turn this on. I'm gonna drive this through here. That little offcut piece that's stuck now in between here, that's gonna be my thin rip. It should be a 16th of an inch. And what's gonna happen is I'm gonna drive it through here. My issue with those, and I've used this one before, but they're a little cumbersome for me personally. One, because whenever I rip something on the table saw, the piece that is in between the blade and the fence, I want it down on the table and I want it up against the fence the best I can. So a lot of times I picture that as in basically drawing an arrow straight down to this corner. If I'm back here, I can do that because I can put pressure here up against here, which is gonna keep this nice and tight in there. But maybe about here, I probably wanna move my hand out of there, and keep in mind this would be much wider. As I do that, what happens is this piece now is cut off and it's left to float in here. I'm not necessarily worried about it coming back up at me, although that can happen, although rare if you have a riving knife in there. But the riving knife is actually narrower than the blade by design. They're supposed to be. And what can happen is that piece can rattle around just enough at a very high rate of speed, and it can actually whittle away the bottom of that cut. Looking at it this way, the bottom can start to get a little bit of taper on it towards the end of that cut. So I used to make 16-inch strips to put in cutting boards. And inevitably what would happen if I wasn't careful, I'd have to cut like half a dozen of them to make sure I got the perfect 2 out of the batch. Because what had happened is this would flutter in next to the blade, and it would start to flutter in and knock some of this off of here. So you'd have a 16th inch at the top and damn near a 32nd at the bottom, meaning it's tapered. And you don't notice it until you glue it all up, and then you go back and you look at your board and you realize that at the top it's nice and at the bottom it is not. Is it that big of a deal? For me, being a perfectionist and selling these to other people, yeah, it was a big deal to me. What I have here instead, now that you got my long-winded explanation of why I don't want to do it the other two ways, which is what you're going to suggest, I have a piece of MDF here. It's a piece of 1/2 inch MDF. You can use 3/4 if you want. About 12 inches long, or probably about 11 inches long. It has 150 grit sandpaper on this side and on one edge. The other edge is smooth and the other face is smooth. Okay, so we're going to use this in 2 different ways. You can determine whether or not you think that it's necessary to do it this way or not. What I have here is a piece of old walnut. I've used it in some router bit videos apparently. Anyways, it's got some scoring on here. It's just a scrap piece, but what I want to do is show you guys how to make thin strips. This piece is stable this way, right? We don't want any rocking in there. If you're going to do thin strips and you want precision, you want your pieces to be nice and milled up. I'm going to use a piece of scrap because I can. If I flip it over this way though, it does have a cup in it. So we're going to take that cup out first, and then we're going to use this piece. And the reason why I want to show you guys this way is because I want to show you that you don't have to have perfectly milled lumber to begin with. It does help though. You at least need one flat side, right? Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna flip it over so that the cup is going this way. We're gonna bring this over here. My blade is already set to the right height. We're gonna take our little push stick here. I'm gonna put the smooth side against the fence. I'm gonna flip it over and put the sandpaper edge down. We're gonna bring this in like so. I'm comfortable with my hands being this close to the blade. If you're not, don't do it, but don't tell me I can't. Why are we using this instead of just pushing it through? Well, it's gonna ensure that we get a nice straight rip. This piece technically is short enough that we can use the fence to get a nice straight rip, but I wanna show it to you this way because if this had a hump to it this way as well, we'd have some issues here, right? So you can have a flat enough side here, but end up with some issues both this way and a cup this way. So this is gonna ensure that no matter what, because we're riding this flat edge against the fence, that we're going to get a nice clean cut. So I'm gonna turn this on and we're going to see what it looks like. All right, so now we have 2 pieces that are nice and stable, okay? All right, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lower this blade down because I don't have a 0 clearance on this. Take this out. I'm actually going to take my riving knife out for right this second. If you're freaking out because I didn't turn the saw off, I don't know what to tell you. If I lose a hand on video, then I don't know. I guess you'll get to see what you're not supposed to do. I'll take a simple piece of blue tape. I'm gonna cover the blade, just like this. You can also use, I'll link this and a video where I talked about it down in the description. This is 0 clearance tape from FASTCAP. It works amazing. I used to have it on my saw. For some reason, when I moved shops, I took it off. I think I was gonna get an actual 0 clearance insert, but this stuff works great. I have it on the miter saw. I've repaired crosscut sleds with it. It's really good. Like I said, I'll link that in the video down in the description. But for today, again, just to keep it cheap and easy, I'm gonna use the blue tape. I'm going to turn my saw on. I'm gonna slowly start raising the blade up. Such a cool sound. Okay, that's good enough, and actually I'll end up coming down just a little bit here. Okay, what we can do is lower this back down out of our way. I'm gonna take my knife right here. I'm gonna slice it up like this. I'm gonna peel this back. Boy, I really wedged that tape down in there. for crying out loud. See, this is the problem with not having a rehearsed video. I'm just gonna peel this up because what I wanna do is be able to put my riving knife back in there. And then we'll just put this back like so. And what that just let us do is very quickly let us get zero clearance so I don't have to worry about my pieces falling in there. And I think we're gonna do 1/8 inch because that's probably more common of what we wanna do here. I think most people are probably gonna wanna go with 1/8 inch more. We cut that line in here so that the riving knife can now poke through, because if you try and cut through that tape or any other sacrificial or zero clearance fence and you have the riving knife on there, it doesn't let the blade go up enough to cut it. So we take the riving knife off, raise our blade up through there, just slice that in, let that riving knife poke back through. We'll get it up here just to where we wanna go. Make sure we don't have any tape there in the way. Okay, so now what I want to do, I'm going to take my freshly jointed edge and we're going to put it right up against the saw blade, or up against the fence, just like this. Now I can take this push stick, I'm going to use the edge with the sandpaper on there down. You can see just how much this grips. It doesn't need a whole lot of pressure at all. So we're going to put this up against here. I'm going to put the smooth side up against the fence. In this first cut, we're gonna end up cutting through that. If you even tell me that you're worried about sandpaper on your saw blade, I swear, it's saw blade in the sand. I've been doing these things for a while now, and I always hear the comments about how the sandpaper is gonna destroy the saw blade. The saw blade doesn't care. If you wanna destroy your saw blade, cut MDF, cut plywood. You'll be good to go. A little bit of sandpaper once in a while is not gonna hurt it whatsoever. I'm gonna turn the dust collection on and just let you guys kind of watch what I'm doing here. Flat side, obviously smooth side up against here. And what this does is it creates down pressure, which we don't need a lot of because of all that surface area. But what it's actually doing is it's mimicking the fence. And so it's going to allow us to cut perfect every single time. All right, so I'm glad that that happened in real time. So what had happened is it because I'm using blue tape, as you push down, you're gonna start eating into that blue tape. And then I just wanted to cut some 1/8 inch. I'll probably cut some more up just so that I can show it for the thumbnail. But because you're using the blue tape, it just breaks down so often. I've talked about it before, I think when I talked about this zero clearance tape. So again, at the very least, use some zero clearance tape or make a zero clearance insert for your table saw. It's going to save you some headache. It's gonna keep pieces from falling down in there. It's gonna prevent some tear out depending on the hook angle of the saw blade that you're using. I know somebody's going to say, well, what about the gripper? The gripper is an amazing tool. It's a push block for those that don't know. Pretty sure everybody knows about the gripper at this point. I use it for all kinds of stuff. There is an 1/8 inch leg that you can have as an attachment to, to one side, so you can replace the 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch leg, whatever it is, and use the 1/8 inch leg. This works okay. It works okay. The problem is that what happens, this grippy stuff that makes it so grippy is also squishy, which means that it moves quite a bit. And if this material isn't perfect, then what happens is you get it up there and it kind of can rock back and forth a little bit. It can also start to get dusty on here, and if you don't pick up on it, it ends up kind of slipping on the material. I know a lot of people have complained about that, but you can clean it up, I think, with some rubbing alcohol or something. I think that's what I've used in the past. So it does work. But the thing is, what happens when you want to cut 16-inch strips? To my knowledge, they only go down to an 1/8 inch, which is what this is. And it also has a few little blade marks in it. And I've had this for probably 7 or 8 years. So, I mean, it makes sense that it's gonna have a few blade marks in it. But literally, that's all you need. Very simple, 1/2 inch piece of MDF. You can use plywood, of course. You just want something that's a nice, flat, stable substrate. Some sandpaper on there. I used 150. I don't know, you can use whatever you want, I suppose. And again, don't worry about the sandpaper on the saw blade. The saw blade doesn't care. What else is there? I think that's it. Anyways, have fun. Zero clearance is gonna be your best friend. This will do it cheap and easy. Again, takes a lot longer to explain than it takes to actually do. Thanks so much for watching as always. We'll see you in the next video.